Why does fasting attract the presence of God? Have you ever wondered why fasting is such a powerful practice for spiritual connection? Many people see fasting as merely abstaining from food, but there's so much more behind this ancient practice. Did you know that fasting can actually attract the presence of God and deepen your spiritual connection? However, the true effectiveness of fasting goes beyond simply not eating. It's deeply connected to how you prepare and the attitude with which you approach this practice. Get ready to discover what you should avoid to ensure that your fast is truly transformative. The purpose of hunger. The purpose of hunger goes beyond a simple survival instinct. God designed the human body so perfectly that hunger is a way to ensure we receive the necessary fuel from food. Without this sensation, we could easily neglect what is vital for our existence. Imagine a car that doesn't alert you when the tank is empty. Sooner or later, it would stop. In the same way, hunger keeps us aware of the need to refuel our machine with the right nutrients, ensuring we have the energy to keep moving forward. However, hunger also connects us to something deeper. It reminds us of our daily dependence, not just on physical food, but also on spiritual sustenance. Just as we cannot live without food, we cannot thrive spiritually without seeking God. This is where fasting comes in, putting hunger into a new perspective. By intentionally choosing to go hungry, or rather, directing that hunger toward a spiritual purpose, we begin to realize that true nourishment comes from God. It's not just the stomach that needs to be satisfied, but the soul. This purpose is particularly relevant when we think about biblical fasting. Fasting invites us to transform a physical need into a spiritual exercise. It serves as a daily reminder that our lives are not sustained by bread alone, but by the word that comes from God. Many might think of fasting as just an ancient practice, but its relevance is timeless. After all, in a world that constantly feeds us distractions, fasting is a way to remember where our true strength lies. And it's not just about ignoring hunger. The act of fasting with purpose is a silent declaration of faith, a way of saying that our true sustenance comes from heaven. Every hunger pang is an opportunity to connect with God more deeply, to transform a basic need into a powerful expression of devotion. For those seeking a richer spiritual life, understanding the purpose of hunger is the first step. Now, think about this: every time we feel hunger, it's an invitation to something greater. It's not just a signal that we need to eat, but a chance to remind ourselves of our purpose here on earth. What you do with your hunger can transform your spiritual life. And that's where fasting becomes a powerful tool. Fasting for spiritual reasons. Fasting goes far beyond simply abstaining from food. It is a spiritual practice deeply rooted in Scripture. Unlike diets, which are often motivated by aesthetic or health reasons, biblical fasting has a higher purpose: drawing closer to God. In the Bible, fasting is a way to make room for the divine, to seek answers, and to strengthen faith. Imagine a mind and body free from the distractions of daily life, ready to connect with something greater. That is the power of purposeful fasting. Spiritual fasting is an invitation to redirect our hunger, not toward food but toward the presence of God. When we fast, we are telling ourselves and the world that there is something more important than satisfying our immediate desires. We are affirming that our true nourishment comes from heaven, not from the earth. This transforms fasting into a powerful tool for prayer and meditation. Many who fast testify that their prayers become more intense and clear, as if the physical abstinence paves the way for more direct communication with God. But how do you start? For those who have never fasted with a spiritual purpose, the idea may seem challenging. However, it's not about starting in a radical way. A successful fast begins with the right intention and a willing heart. For example, you can start with a partial fast, giving up a specific food or a meal. The important thing is that this choice is meaningful to you and that the abstention is accompanied by prayer and reflection. What could be simpler than exchanging lunch for a moment of silence and devotion? And this sacrifice, no matter how small, has the power to move spiritual mountains. Not because the act of fasting itself has power, but because it places us in a position of humility and dependence on God. By emptying ourselves physically, the soul finds space to be filled with spiritual things. This is the true essence of biblical fasting. It is an act of worship, a declaration that we trust God to sustain us in every way, both physically and spiritually. Now, reflecting on this, we see that fasting for spiritual reasons is a practice that requires discipline and intention. It's not about showing others, but about an intimate search for God. Biblical examples of fasting. Throughout the Bible, fasting is presented as an essential practice for those seeking a deeper connection with God. One of the most significant examples is the Day of Atonement, or Yom Kippur, where fasting was a sacred requirement. On this day, the people of Israel would abstain from eating and drinking as a sign of repentance and to seek forgiveness for their sins. This practice shows us that fasting is not just a matter of physical discipline but a powerful spiritual tool for purification and reconciliation with God. In addition to Yom Kippur, there are other notable examples of fasting in the Scriptures. Moses fasted for 40 days on Mount Sinai before receiving the 10 Commandments, demonstrating that fasting can prepare the spirit to receive divine revelations. Similarly, the prophet Elijah fasted before hearing God's voice in a still, small whisper. These examples illustrate that fasting is a preparation for an encounter with the sacred, a way to tune our spiritual ears to hear God's voice. In the New Testament, we see Jesus fasting for 40 days in the desert before beginning his ministry. This example is particularly powerful because Jesus, being the Son of God, demonstrated that fasting is a fundamental practice for those who wish to be in harmony with the Father. Jesus' fast not only prepared him to face the devil's temptations but also established a model for his followers. If Christ himself fasted to strengthen himself spiritually, how much more should we, who seek to follow him, consider this practice? Another striking example is the collective fast of the nation of Nineveh, as described in the book of Jonah. After Jonah's preaching about the impending destruction, the people of Nineveh, including their king, proclaimed a fast throughout the city and dressed in sackcloth as an act of repentance. This fast was so powerful that God changed his decision and spared the city from destruction. This example shows that fasting, when done with a sincere and repentant heart, can even change the course of destiny. These biblical examples of fasting teach us that this practice is not just an ancient tradition but a powerful tool for those seeking divine intervention. Fasting connects us with God's will and prepares us to receive his blessings. Teachings of Jesus on fasting. In his divine wisdom, Jesus left us clear guidelines on how to fast in a way that pleases God. In Matthew 6 verses 16 to 18, he teaches that fasting should be an intimate and sincere act, not intended to draw the attention of others. Jesus warned against fasting with a sad or disheveled appearance, a tactic some use to show others their supposed devotion. Instead, he advised that when fasting, we should wash our face and anoint our head so that the fast would be seen only by God, who sees what is done in secret and rewards openly. This teaching of Jesus on fasting reflects a deep concern for the motivation of the heart. Fasting should not be a form of spiritual showmanship but a moment of genuine connection with God. In an age where social media can easily turn spiritual acts into public spectacles, Jesus' instruction becomes even more relevant. When fasting, one should focus on their relationship with God, seeking to purify the soul and strengthen the spirit without worrying about the opinions of others. Jesus also demonstrated that fasting, combined with prayer, has transformative power. He stated that certain types of demons can only be cast out through fasting and prayer, highlighting the importance of this practice in the life of those seeking spiritual strength. Imagine someone facing a difficult situation or an intense spiritual challenge. By following Jesus' example, this person can turn to fasting and prayer as powerful weapons to overcome these battles. Furthermore, Jesus emphasized that fasting should be done with a clear purpose. It is not just a matter of abstinence but of directing that deprivation toward a more intense pursuit of God's presence. For example, someone going through a period of important decisions might fast to seek divine guidance. In this context, fasting becomes a tool to align the heart and mind with God's will, allowing answers to come with greater clarity and discernment. These teachings of Jesus on fasting invite us to reflect on the sincerity of our spiritual practices. Fasting is not just a ritual but an expression of our devotion and trust in God. Yet, amid this, it is natural for concerns about fasting to arise, such as hunger or the judgment of others. Concerns about fasting. When it comes to fasting, many people face legitimate concerns. The first of these is the fear of hunger. The idea of going without food, even for a short period, can cause anxiety, especially for those who have never fasted before. However, it's essential to remember that fasting in the Bible has always been presented as a voluntary practice and that it is not necessary to push oneself beyond one's own limits. God knows everyone's limitations and values the intention of the heart above all else. For those starting out, it's advisable to begin with short fasts, which are easier to manage. Another common fear is social judgment. In a society where eating is an important social activity, fasting can attract questions or curious looks. Someone might fear being seen as extreme or fanatic because of their faith. However, as Jesus taught, fasting is a practice between the person and God and should not be done to impress others. Keeping the fast secret, as Christ suggested, helps avoid these situations and keeps the focus on the spiritual purpose. There is also concern about the physical effects of fasting. Some people worry that the lack of food might harm their health or daily performance. It is true that fasting can cause temporary discomforts, such as headaches or fatigue, especially in the early days. However, it's important to remember that there are different types of fasting in the Bible, and not all involve complete abstinence from food. A partial fast, for example, might be a more suitable option for those with these concerns. Finally, the fear of failing at fasting is something that troubles many. Some fear not being able to complete the planned fast, whether due to hunger, fatigue, or temptations. It is crucial to understand that fasting is a spiritual practice that should be done with grace and understanding, both of oneself and of God. If someone fails in their fast, it should not be a cause for guilt but an opportunity to learn and try again. The important thing is the effort and intention to draw closer to God. Overcoming these concerns is the first step to experiencing the spiritual benefits of fasting. And when these fears are overcome, a person opens up to exploring the different types of fasting, each with its own characteristics and purposes. Types of fasting. Fasting in the Bible presents itself in various forms, each suited to different situations and spiritual purposes. First, we have absolute fasting, which is the most rigorous of all. In this type of fasting, the person abstains completely from food and water for a specified period. This type of fast is usually reserved for times of extreme spiritual need, as seen in the example of Moses, who fasted for 40 days on Mount Sinai. However, it is important to have discernment and divine guidance before embarking on such an intense fast, especially considering one's health and individual circumstances. Another type of fast is the normal fast, in which the person abstains from solid foods but can still consume liquids such as water, juices, or light broths. This type of fasting is common among those seeking a more accessible practice that still allows the body to stay hydrated. It is an effective way to focus on prayer and Bible reading, allowing the person to maintain their energy while dedicating themselves to a spiritual purpose. This fast is often chosen by those who want a balance between spiritual discipline and caring for the body. The partial fast is perhaps the most commonly practiced among Christians, especially during extended periods of consecration. In this type of fast, the person abstains from certain types of foods or drinks, such as meat, sweets, or alcohol. It is a practice that allows for a deeper connection with God while the person still participates in everyday activities. A biblical example is Daniel's fast, where he and his companions abstained from rich foods and consumed only vegetables and water. This type of fast is ideal for those who desire a continuous practice while seeking to purify the body and mind. There is also intermittent fasting, which has gained popularity both in spiritual and health contexts. In this method, the person alternates periods of fasting with periods of eating. Although it is a more modern concept, the principle can be applied in the biblical context, where fasting is done at specific times of the day or week. This type of fasting is accessible and flexible, allowing anyone, regardless of their limitations, to participate and experience spiritual benefits. Each type of fasting has its place and purpose in a Christian spiritual walk. The key is to choose the type of fast that best aligns with one's purpose and individual capabilities. And now that we understand the types of fasting, the next step is to learn how to begin in a safe and effective way, especially for those who are starting this spiritual journey. Start with a gradual fast. For those beginning to explore the practice of biblical fasting, it's important to remember that this spiritual journey doesn't need to start drastically. In fact, starting with a gradual fast is the most recommended approach. Think of fasting as a spiritual muscle that needs to be strengthened over time. Skipping a meal, for instance, can be an excellent first step. This small sacrifice might seem simple, but it is a powerful reminder of our dependence on God in every aspect of life, including the most basic needs like hunger. By adopting this initial practice, an individual begins to develop the discipline needed for longer and more intense fasts in the future. It is during this period that a person learns to handle the distractions and temptations that arise when the body starts to complain about the lack of food. This adaptation phase is essential, as it allows the mind to align with the spirit, focusing more on prayer and Bible reading. To ease this process, many choose to start fasting for short periods, such as a few hours or half a day, which gradually prepares the body and spirit for greater challenges. As confidence and discipline grow, the fast can be extended to a full day, where one might choose to abstain from 2 or 3 meals. During this time, it is crucial to maintain an attitude of humility and prayer, always seeking divine guidance. The focus should be on intimacy with God, not simply on abstaining from food. Thus, gradual fasting allows a person to discover their own capacity and limits without feeling overwhelmed or discouraged. For many, the idea of fasting for days may seem intimidating, but when starting slowly and with purpose, this practice becomes a powerful tool for spiritual growth. For example, a person might choose to fast once a week, gradually increasing the time and intensity of the fast as they feel spiritually ready. This gradual progress not only helps build the necessary physical endurance but also strengthens the spiritual connection, making fasting a sustainable and enriching practice over time. Starting with a gradual fast also allows a person to experience the spiritual benefits without the risk of fatigue or discouragement. Fasting is not a marathon but a spiritual journey that should be undertaken at the right pace. And as this practice becomes part of daily life, fasting transforms into a tool of spiritual transformation, opening doors to a deeper relationship with God. Fasting with others. Fasting with others can be a deeply enriching and spiritually uplifting experience. In many cases, group fasting not only strengthens personal commitment but also creates a powerful network of spiritual support. Imagine a group of friends or church members coming together for a common fast. This type of collective practice not only intensifies each participant's spiritual focus but also fosters a sense of community and belonging. When people unite in prayer and fasting, they share not only the physical challenge but also the blessings and victories that come with this practice. Group fasting can be especially beneficial during periods of prayer and intercession for specific causes. For instance, a church might come together for a collective fast during a time of crisis or to seek divine guidance in important decisions. This practice strengthens unity in common purpose, allowing the group to focus on collective needs and spiritual goals. Mutual support during fasting also helps overcome moments of weakness and discouragement, as participants can encourage one another and share their experiences and prayers. Furthermore, fasting with others offers the opportunity to learn and grow spiritually together. Shared discussions and reflections can enrich personal understanding of the practice of fasting and its spiritual implications. For example, participating in a fasting group might expose someone to different forms and traditions of fasting, providing valuable insights that can be incorporated into their own practice. The shared experience also opens up space for testimonies and encouragement, helping to strengthen the faith of all involved. However, it is important to remember that even in a collective fast, personal motivation and the individual relationship with God should remain at the center. Fasting should not become a social event or a competition but rather a genuine expression of devotion and spiritual seeking. Each person should focus on their own journey and purpose while supporting and encouraging others. This balanced approach ensures that fasting is an edifying experience for both the individual and the group. Understanding the dynamics of group fasting can pave the way for the next step, choosing the type of fast that best suits one's spiritual needs and goals. Choosing the right fast. Choosing the right type of fast is crucial to ensure that the practice is both effective and sustainable. Each fasting method has its own characteristics and specific purposes, and the key is to align your choice with your spiritual goals and personal conditions. For instance, an absolute fast, where one abstains from both food and water, might be appropriate for times of intense spiritual seeking but requires careful preparation and an awareness of the body's limitations. Beginners might find it easier to start with partial or normal fasts, where abstinence is limited to certain foods or specific meals. The choice of fasting type should also consider the available time and lifestyle. For those with busy schedules, a partial fast can be an excellent option. This might mean avoiding solid foods during the day but allowing liquids such as water and natural juices to maintain hydration and provide some energy. This method allows for maintaining the practice of fasting without compromising the ability to perform daily activities. Conversely, a longer and more rigorous fast can be reserved for periods of retreat or intense spiritual reflection. Another aspect to consider is the frequency of fasting. It is important to choose an approach that fits the pace of daily life and is sustainable over time. Some may opt for daily fasts, where they abstain from a specific meal, while others might choose longer fasting periods, such as fasting for a whole day once a week. Balance is key. When choosing a fast, it is essential for a person to assess their physical, mental, and spiritual health, and adjust the practice as needed to avoid burnout or frustration. The choice should also take into account personal motivation and the purpose of the fast. If the goal is to seek a closer relationship with God, the fast should be undertaken with a pure heart and a sincere desire to connect more deeply with spirituality. For example, someone seeking divine guidance in an important decision might choose a more intense fast during a period of fervent prayer. In contrast, a lighter fast could be used as a regular practice to maintain spiritual connection and discipline. With the right choice, fasting becomes a practice that enriches and transforms spiritual life. By adopting a practice that aligns with personal goals and needs, fasting can be a powerful tool for growth and transformation. Heart and attitude in fasting. The sincerity of the heart and attitude during fasting are fundamental aspects that define the depth and effectiveness of this spiritual practice. Fasting is not just about abstaining from food, but a reflection of a sincere quest for a deeper connection with God. When someone fasts with a genuine heart and a real desire for spiritual growth, the impact of fasting is far more significant. It's akin to investing in a relationship. The quality of the engagement determines the depth of the connection. During fasting, an attitude of humility and devotion is crucial. In Matthew 6 verses 16 to 18, Jesus emphasizes that fasting should be done in secret, without seeking approval or recognition from others. This shows that the true purpose of fasting is internal and personal. Instead of focusing on outward appearances or what others think, the focus should be on inner transformation and communion with God. A sincere practice of fasting, accompanied by prayer and reflection, can lead to profound and lasting spiritual growth. For those just beginning to practice fasting, it's important to keep an open mind and a humble heart. Expecting immediate results can lead to frustration, but true transformation happens over time. Sincerity and patience are essential for a fruitful fasting practice. For example, someone fasting to seek clarity in a decision should be willing to wait and listen for divine guidance, even if the answer does not come right away. Additionally, maintaining a positive attitude and gratitude during fasting can make a big difference. Recognizing and being thankful for the blessings received, even during the period of abstinence, makes the fasting experience more enriching and rewarding. Gratitude and focus on God help sustain motivation and align the heart with the spiritual purpose of fasting. The right heart and attitude transform fasting from a simple practice into a powerful tool for spiritual growth and connection with God. With this understanding, fasting becomes a pathway to greater spiritual intimacy and fulfilling a higher purpose. Fasting is more than a physical challenge, it's a spiritual journey that can bring profound changes and a closer relationship with God. The key to a successful fast lies in the sincerity of the heart and the attitude with which you approach this practice. Now that you understand the fundamental aspects of fasting and what to avoid for it to be more effective, it's time to put this knowledge into practice. How can you adapt fasting to your life to maximize your spiritual experience? How about starting with a simple plan and gradually deepening your practice? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to keep receiving valuable tips on enhancing your spiritual journey.